So a very short disclaimer before we get started is that ranking adventures is obviously very subjective. There's no real quantitative metrics to use to sort of put one adventure above another. So with that said, the metric that I use to compile this list really comes down to sort of how overwhelmingly transformative a specific ride or adventure was and how much it's really stuck with me now through the years, and that experience has held sort of in my mind and in my heart. Starting off at number 10, we have Mormon Mountain. So Mormon Mountain is a local peak here in the Flagstaff area, and I've actually been up it on two wheels several times, probably 5 or 6 times. And what makes this particular peak so special and worthy of this list is that it marks one of the first challenges that I overcame on a motorcycle. Very early on, after getting my Himalayan 411 in late 2020, I tried to reach the summit of Mormon Mountain, only to take my first really bad spill on a motorcycle. And for months, I was terrified to try this climb again. And it was only after finding success on the Honda Trail 125 that this peak became one of my favorites to tackle in the area. It has just the right mix of steep gradients, loose rocks, breathtaking scenery, and to this day, when I'm looking for a fun, technical ride close to home, I'll hop on the CRF 300L and head up to the summit. Coming in at number 9, we have my full-day adventure exploring the invisible mountain of Sitgreaves. As I explained in the video of this adventure, Sitgreaves is a peak near Flagstaff, a fairly prominent one at that seems to always somehow go unnoticed. Now, what makes this particular trip so memorable and special to me is that it was one of the most unique multimodal treks I've ever taken. I worked my way over to the mountain on remote forest roads and unmarked trails on the Honda 125. Then, I free hiked and bushwhacked up to the summit on foot. On the return hike, I then got snowed on and nearly struck by lightning, and then had to ride out on flooded and washed out forest roads. It truly was an all-encompassing yet magnificent day, an awesome all-around adventure. At number 8 on my list, we have to go back to 2022 and the motorcycle adventure tour I decided to host here in northern Arizona, a tour I called NAZMAT. Over the winter, I spent weeks putting together multiple scenic loops in the area in the hopes that I could get several riders to come up and join me for a long weekend. And despite my channel only having a few thousand subscribers at the time, I still managed to get 5 riders to come up and ride along with me. The entire experience gave me a real sense of pride and purpose. Not only did I come up with some fantastic routes, but I was then able to share them with others. On one specific climb up a steep and technical road near Kendrick Peak, I managed to ride the entirety of the trail on my Himalayan without dropping the bike once. This was the first time that I had successfully navigated a true Class 4 section of road, and it had an enormous impact on my riding confidence moving forward. To this day, I look back on that ride as a genuine inflection point with respect to my riding ability. At number 7 on the list, we have the Crooked Raven Waypoint Scramble Rally, and yes, that is a mouthful. Now, while this was a multi-day event and it covered hundreds of miles of riding over many different types of terrain and surfaces, there are 2 very specific things that stand out as special from this adventure. First, this was the first time I had done any sort of overnight motorcycle trip with any other riders, complete with camping, the whole shebang. Second, and most importantly, this was the adventure where I finally shed my fear of riding in the sand. Over the second day of the rally, my riding partner and I went through some of the most difficult terrain I have ever ridden, and somehow I came out of the entire day unscathed without dropping the bike a single time. I came to learn later, after making it home, that we actually covered over 50 miles along an expert section of the AZ BDR, and I had no idea. Needless to say, the entire experience made me a better and more confident rider, and I still carry many of the vivid memories from that weekend with me today. Coming in at number 6 of my best rides, we have the infamous Schnebly Hill Road. Schnebly Hill Road is a well-known and treacherous 7-mile climb up out of Sedona. It climbs over 2,000 feet up technical and rock-littered terrain and is incredibly difficult to navigate successfully. Just a month after getting my Himalayan in late 2020, and in my hubris, I made the mistake of trying to tackle this road and, as expected, dropped the bike less than a mile into my attempt. But just a month later, I went back and somehow managed to make it all the way up to the top, all 7 miles, successfully and without issue, something that I'm still baffled by today. In the years since, I've gone back many times and made this climb on other, much smaller bikes, but no experience will ever be as special as that first ride up Schnebly Hill, when I had absolutely no business being there and no idea what the hell I was doing. It's because of this that I rank Schnebly Hill Road as number 6 on my list, and it will forever have a special place in my heart. Halfway through the list at number 5, we have something of a broad collection of rides. You see, over the past 5+ years, I've taken several multi-day moto tours through Colorado, Utah, and New Mexico. Each of these trips has included a healthy dose of mountain passes as well as hikes up 14,000-foot peaks, all sorts of crazy adventures. These annual treks are one of my favorite parts of the year, and I always come back with heaps of good memories. It's impossible for me to pick just one specific day or section along these innumerable adventures, but no list would be complete without mentioning these summer rides. So I suppose if I had to pick one specific memory from these many two-wheeled adventures that I hold as particularly special, it would be the day I rode up the Schaefer Trail near Moab, Utah. This stretch had it all. Steep switchbacks, precarious cliffs, unstable rocks, and tricky sand. I can remember making it to the top of this ride and just feeling overwhelmed by it all. This is one of those videos that I've posted that I go back to and watch regularly, even today, because it was so transformative. Coming in at number 4, we have what is probably the most sentimental of all my rides, and that is my collective riding out to a place known as Harding Point. Now, I've spoken about this special place many times on this channel and posted many videos about it, but the short of it is that Harding Point has now become my zen place deep in the woods that I always venture to when I need to find some peace. I first explored this place on my Himalayan in late 2020, but have been back now countless times. The ride out to the point is a bit tricky, but not overwhelming. But then once there, the vistas are truly magnificent. And no one ever goes out to this remote place. And to me, it perfectly captures the feeling that I so often try to find when going on my many treks to nowhere. Harding Point has become so special to me as my hideaway place in the woods that I even wrote an entire chapter about it in my Treks to Nowhere written collection. Moving on to number 3, we have my epic journeys, plural, to find the Geographic Center of Arizona. Now, if you watch this video series on the channel, you know that it took me 4 attempts and many months to ultimately find success in reaching the Geographic Center. Never have I worked so hard and pushed through so many ridiculous obstacles on 2 wheels simply to set foot on a geographical oddity like a state center point. Each attempt involved a combination of difficult trail riding coupled with off-trail and treacherous hiking. And even when I did find success, the journey had me hiking over 22 miles round trip after riding nearly 100 miles, all while still recovering from COVID. Reaching the center was probably the single most difficult and taxing trek I've ever done that involved 2 wheels. The specific 2-wheeled memory from this adventure that stands out as the most special to me was probably my day up on Dead Man Mesa during my second attempt. I took the CRF 300 LS on the most difficult terrain I've ever ridden to this day, and it is still the only time I've ever dropped that bike. I was well in over my head that day and did eventually have to abort that attempt, but because of that experience, the entire adventure stands out as one of my best on 2 wheels. Okay, well, we're down to the final two most incredible of my two-wheeled adventures. And coming in as the runner-up in position 2, we have my 1,000-plus mile Saddlesore ride around the state of Arizona. Now, initially, I had no idea if I would even enjoy such an adventure, sitting on my motorcycle for over 20 hours, covering 1,000-plus paved miles, especially given my proclivity for the trail riding. But ultimately, it was one of the best adventures I've ever tackled and completed on any of my motorcycles. There is just something so special to the very nature of the adventure, meticulously planning the route, chasing the clock, ticking off checkpoints. It was all very left-brained and was incredibly satisfying to my numbers and goal-oriented tendencies. What also made this trek so special was the gamified feeling to it all, knowing I was chasing that strict clock, and yet having to remember to collect my necessary receipts and documentation. It was all just very thrilling. I also loved knowing that people, some of you, were actively following along with my ride because I had my inReach tracker on. There's just something really satisfying about that. Now, I suppose another reason this adventure was so memorable is that it was all done on my original chariot, the Himalayan 411, a bike really not suited for such an iron butt ride. In the end, even if it was slow, and even if it was a slog at times, I just have so many good memories from that day, and I go back to watch that video at least once a month. Okay, well, we've made it to my #1 best motorcycle adventure on two wheels, the single most transformative and memorable of all my rides from the past 5 years. But before I reveal the notable adventure, there's a few honorable mentions, so let me roll a few off. We had my ride to Arizona's largest tree, a fun-filled day trekking on the new Ibex 450 to find a massive cottonwood tree in Skull Valley, Arizona. We also had my fantastic trek along the AZ BDR on the Trail 125, marked not only by some wild and technical terrain, but by the fact that this was my last real adventure before parting with my 125 in favor of my new CRF 300 LS. We also had my quirky bike and bike trek up to the Grand Canyon, where I strapped my Brompton foldable bicycle to the back of my Himalayan so that I could both ride up to the canyon on the motorcycle and then ride out to Hermit's Rest on the bicycle. And lastly, worth mentioning is we have some more recent treks on the CRF 300 LS up both LeBaron and Davenport Hills, both fun days exploring remote little mountains in the woods. At any rate, let's not waste any more time. Let's get to #1. At #1 on my list for best two-wheeled adventures, we have Flag-ona.
Flag-ona, ultimate loop.
What the heck is Flag-ona? Well, Flag-ona was a loop that I designed as a way to get down into the city of Sedona by way of a place known as Casner Mountain. A ridiculous path, definitely not suitable for motorcycles, let alone a 125cc farm bike. This single adventure truly had everything. Wild trails, insanely steep gradients, wipeouts, ridiculous vistas, scary stretches, points of no return. You name it, it had it. It even featured a climb up Schnebly Hill Road as part of the loop, just for fun. In total, the day was entirely successful, and I somehow managed to complete the ridiculous, nearly 100-mile loop unscathed and with the most incredible memories. This single adventure is by far the one I rewatch more than any of my other treks or excursions. There is just something so raw and so pure about this one specific journey that I just can't explain it, and I can't help myself but to keep going back to it. I guess you could say that Flag-ona holds the most special place in my two-wheeled heart. So far. And with that, I will bring this post to an end. I really hope you enjoyed revisiting these memorable adventures with me, and I have no doubt that eventually there will be a new #1 on the list. So take care, everyone. Be safe out there. Get out there, make memories, have fun, and compile your own lists of best rides. See you in the next video. Bye.